Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Thatbloke Zed, and I'm here to give you a summary of the Should I Buy series so far, starting with Towns. This game had superb ideas, a thrilling promise, and the potential to be one of my favourite games of all time. However, it left a lot to be desired. The tutorial was pointless, the graphics were subpar, and although you had the access to a lot of options, there was very little utilisation of them, and in some areas were just flat out pointless. Your citizens would wander off and die, and you couldn't control your soldiers. Many other faults with the game. Overall, this game achieved a sensational score of 3 out of 10. Next up was FTL. This game rose up from nowhere and took everyone off their feet. Although graphically lacking, the gameplay value was through the roof. Flying across the galaxy, escaping rebel fleets, and fighting for your life along the way, battling aliens and trying to manage your power and trying to put out fires especially. Overall, this game was a huge hit and scored a respectable 9 out of 10 in my books. Then there was Antechamber. This game was well received by many and is guaranteed to both annoy you and impress you, traversing through a maze of ever-changing rooms while having puns thrown in your face the entire time. This game is graphically solid and is a must-buy for any fan of games. However, it lacks in any real replay value since you already know what you need to do and what to expect. Next up was Prison Architect, a theme hospital-inspired game that allowed the player to construct and manage their very own prison, micromanaging everything from hiring cleaners and chefs to assigning the daily routine of prisoners and guard patrol routes. The game is being developed by a small team working for an independent company, and they really have a diamond of a game in the making here. Even though this game looks and is rather fantastic, it's still in its alpha state and is desperately looking for more support from the public. I would rate this game very highly at 8 out of 10, and it would be higher with a game not in alpha. I highly recommend that people take a look at this game and show them their support. Thomas Was Alone, a puzzle-jumping platform game that most people were expecting to be yet another indie hipster piece of gremlin feces. However, the naysayers were soon silenced when the game showed incredible voice acting, well-polished graphics, and music that was so well done it could have been for any A-rated game available on the market. This game is well worth the asking price and rates a very high 9 out of 10 in my books. Euro Truck Simulator 2, a truck driving game that also includes business management and a solid financial element to break up the gameplay. The driving is simulated perfectly, and you'll often find yourself getting very tired behind the wheel. The business element is by no means the main focus of the game, but is a large part of it, which unfortunately leads to disappointment if you were looking to expand upon it further, and the financial side seems rather important at the beginning, but quickly it's no longer your main goal, which leads you to question why you're driving around at all, since you no longer need the money. Now don't get me wrong, this is a great game, however certain elements would have made this a perfect game. The ability to get out of your truck, for example, even if it was for tiny things such as refueling or paying for said fuel. Would have been nice to see more weather changes other than sun and rain, and cities that were larger than a couple of warehouses and a garage. Being able to see drivers that you'd hired in trucks that you'd customized would have been really nice, but no. Although there are a few things that could have made this game better, it's ultimately a truck driving simulator and it delivers that perfectly, so the game receives an 8 out of 10 in my books. Then the infamous Alien Colonial Marines, a first-person shooter that places you in the shoes of a colonial marine fighting off aliens and mercenaries alike. This game was absolutely trashed by game reviewers, both amateur and professional alike, and rightly so. This game felt as though it was in its beta stages of development, which led to terrible AI, pointless armor, horrible texturing, and for those who played it on the console, just flat out awful graphics entirely. The characters in the game were devoid of any personality, and there were huge game breaking and law breaking bugs and scripts. Having said all that, The game wasn't as bad as many were saying, and I felt it was a little bit too harshly reviewed. Though not worth the money by any stretch of the imagination, I would still rate this game around 6 out of 10. I wouldn't recommend buying this game until the price drops to at least £15 because it's just not worth any more than that. Empire! Many were surprised to see this game released so quickly. It was in its alpha state, and then a month or two later it was released, which has led to some pretty negative feedback. The AI is non-existent, and your minions won't even eat unless you command them to. Taking control of your armies is impossible if they're not designated to a team, and heroes will randomly spawn into your dungeon, making it impossible to build defensively, which also makes traps pointless, and there are a few other bugs as well, such as minions getting stuck on the walls. Even the multiplayer's in beta, despite the fact that the game's been released. All those problems aside, this is still a really beautiful game, and rather enjoyable as a single player experience, so with it costing less than £20 as well, you can't really complain about, some of the missing features, especially since it's a new release and the developers are sure to fix many of the problems. I'd rate this 7 out of 10, and I would probably put the rating higher as soon as they fix some of these issues, which they're bound to do. Which brings us to the French game, Bientôt l'été, or however you pronounce it. It is a simulation game? Some kind of French short film inspired game that's supposed to inspire some kind of deeper thought and meaning? Well, I'm not sure, but the only thing it inspired me to do was give it a terrible game rating and curse the day I decided to purchase it. From lousy graphics to terrible mechanics, this game's just flat out awful. It makes little to no sense, from its horrible control system to huge frame rate drops with its translucent pile of curls. This game's extremely cheap in price and appearances. It's worth less than a used piece of toilet roll. Elements of the game included, such as the game of chess you saw me play when I covered the game initially, are complete nonsense, as well as being able to interact with things only when you enter like a Tron state. I rate this game a really generous 1 out of 10. The only thing it's good for is to give to your worst enemy. Dungeon Land, a quirky and comedy dungeon crawling game that pits dungeon maestros against heroes in a battle of wills. Working together, the heroes try and overcome the sneaky tricks and comedy enemies that the maestro throws at them. This game is a pure form of entertainment with friends. It's also well-polished graphics and well-polished voice acting, and it is well worth its price tag. That said, the game sadly lacks in any real replay value and becomes stale very quickly. I rate this game 7 out of 10, and it's a must-buy for those who enjoy playing at home with a few friends. The Book of Unwritten Tales, a point-and-click puzzle game that's as hilarious as it is quirky. The game is a complete parody and references many films from The Lord of the Rings to Indiana Jones, whilst mocking MMOs and RPGs throughout. This is a must-buy game for anyone that was a fan of Broken Sword, and could well turn out to be one of my favourite games of all time. The art style is second to none, the voice acting is almost unparalleled, and the accents are just perfect. Although the game is a little bit too easy for my tastes, it's very hard to let that have any impact on my rating at all. I give this game a 9 out of 10 and highly recommend that you purchase it. Hacker Evolution Duality, a hacker simulation game that supposedly places you in the shoes of a hacker and gives you certain goals to achieve. This game is not worth the money. Even if it were for 99 pence, it's just not worth that. The tutorial leaves out certain things that you should know. Bounced links springs to mind. For a hacking simulator, there's no simulation of any hacking to be done. Now, don't get me wrong, I had no expectation for this game to teach people how to actually hack, but a little bit of gameplay would have been nice. Instead, what happens is, you click firewall, and you magically hack down the firewall without actually having to do anything. The most challenging thing in this game is dragging one bar from one side to the other to simulate someone's voice. The game is nonsense, and I cannot in good conscience recommend this game at all, and I rate it a generous 2 out of 10. And those have been the games that I have covered in the Should I Buy series so far. Thank you very much for watching. I have been Thatbloke Z.